To make the 80th anniversary of D-Day the subject of our By the Numbers today. Remember, this is the day that literally changed the world, turned the tide on World War II, and the whole thing started about 6:30 in the morning. So you look at the numbers on this, about 160,000 Allied troops from the U.S., Britain, and Canada invaded Nazi-occupied France, attacking German forces on 5 beaches in Normandy. And of that, 73,000 were American troops, 73,000 Americans. The Allies faced 50,000 German soldiers, but they were expecting the attacks, the Germans, to come on a different stretch of coastline. So the surprise worked. D-Day was unprecedented in its size and its audacity, using the largest ever armada, 11,000 Allied aircraft. And then you had 7,000 ships and boats. Now, during the invasion itself, more than 4,000 Allied troops were killed. Of that, that includes, on the American side, a number of the top 2,500. There were also more than 5,000 who were wounded. And, the Allies then liberated Paris 2 months later. It's not an exaggeration to say that's what turned it all around. Senator Dan Sullivan is our guest right now. The Republican from Alaska joins us today. Your thoughts just on this day before we get into any politics or policy or anything like that?
Well, Connell, it's really important that you lay out those numbers and the sacrifice. And, what's happening today with the 80th anniversary, it's so important that we never forget this. We still have veterans, they're in their late 90s, 100-year-old veterans who were there. And I think that the other thing that I think it's important to remember, D-Day reminds us what an exceptional nation America is. At the World War II Memorial here in Washington, D.C., it says that Americans came to liberate, not to conquer, to defeat tyranny and provide freedom. And, no other country, no other great nation, no other empire, Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, certainly the Chinese Communist Party now, no other nation can say that. I'm reminded of Colin Powell's words that the only land that we sought in World War II after we defeated our enemies was the land enough to bury our dead. And, the cemeteries in Europe, cemeteries in the Philippines in World War II to bury our dead remind us of what an exceptional nation we are.
We are, and those were the most exceptional among us who fought in that World War, certainly why they'll call the greatest generation. It does, on a day like this, though, I think, give us a chance to talk a little bit about the bigger picture and the present day. I do want to talk, as you know, before we got involved in World War II, before Pearl Harbor, there was a lot of debate about isolationism in this country. There's some of that now. The president brought that up today in his remarks in Normandy, talking about Ukraine a bit. Let me play a clip of that, and then we'll have that discussion. This is President Biden.
Ukraine's neighbors will be threatened. All of Europe will be threatened. And make no mistake, the autocrats of the world are watching closely to see what happens in Ukraine, to see if we let this illegal aggression go unchecked. We cannot let that happen. To surrender to bullies, to bow down to dictators is simply unthinkable.
What about that comparison, Senator, then versus now?
Well, look, with regard to the issue of isolationism, I think that's always been on both the right and left in democratic politics. You saw the National Security Supplemental that passed with strong bipartisan support recently in the House and the Senate. So I still think the vast majority of Republicans are the party of peace through strength, recognizing how important it is to make sure we have a strength enough to deter our enemies. And that's one area where I've tried to press the president and his team on, which they aren't learning the lessons of the late 1930s and early 1940s, because this administration keeps cutting defense spending. It's shrinking the Army, shrinking the Navy, shrinking the Marine Corps. And, the president can have tough words, but if his military keeps shrinking and readiness declines, that's the most important way in which you keep the peace, is strength. And right now, the president is going the opposite way, and that does not impress the dictators either in Beijing or in Moscow. We need to get back to peace through strength, Connell, and build up our military during these very dangerous times. And that's what the Biden administration is not doing that.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.